So lovely to see you all. Welcome to the second African e-waste conference. And for anyone, now we're waiting for the big bunch that was in the last session to also join this session. Yeah, we will start. So this session is called The Role of Private Sector in Promoting Positive Climate, the Environmental and Social Accountability. And with us today we have Brian Ochieng, who is the Manager of Climate Risk Management, Environment, Social Governance at I&M Bank of Kenya. We have Joos van the Noortgate, who's Environmental Health Technical Referent at Médecins Frontièrs at MSF. And we have Owen Ombima, Senior Officer Sustainable Business and Social Impact at Safaricom Kenya. Warm welcome to all our panelists. We look forward to having a presentation from each and every one of you. If you want to share slides or just do the presentation live is fine. And then we will round off with a discussion and Q&A session if anyone has Q&As from questions from the attendees as well. Thank you. Is there anyone who feels like they want to start? Otherwise, I will go in the order I have it in my paper, which would start with Brian from I&M Bank. Welcome, Brian. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to make presentation in this conference. And indeed, it's coming at a good time when we really must account and be responsible for what we consume and what we produce. So I was particularly very much interested to just, as you have mentioned, we are in charge of climate risk management and sustainability at I&M Bank Kenya. Thank you. Yes, so come to look at the background upon which our presentation or discussion would be based. We realize that currently, as ongoing e-waste production is really increasing, and it's projected that by 2030, we're going to have at least 74.7 million metric tons. And that is also going to be boosted by the growth in ICT that is increasing demand. So this calls for action. And I believe that Africa, we are really trying or in the move towards adopting best practices in waste management. And that is seen in the number of countries or growing number of countries that are adopting either e-waste management policy, regulations, and legislation around it. But I think that as the private sector, and speaking for the financial sector, we have a greater role to probably collaborate or ensure that we are actually sustainably financing such if they have to be produced. So in speaking to our role as the private sector, probably in promoting climate and environment social accountability, I would speak to what is as ongoing within the private sector and what is probably proposed as best practice within the private sector. And at private sector, currently we are keen on ensuring sustainable financial growth or financial initiatives that would help us to identify, mitigate, and manage environment and social risks as could be emanating from our activities and in our relationship with our stakeholders. Some of these risks are either from our direct consumption in the process of production. Some are equally indirectly through the lending activities, and by and large that which also contribute to or are associated with the customer or the client activities. The key aspects that we look into when probably we speak to financial sustainable financing, we are looking at the growth that is inclusive and innovative. We're also looking at the financial viability, economic viability, and the financial return, with which now we talk to how viable economic in terms of the social and environmental impacts of your investment vis-a-vis the profit that you make from the activities. We are looking at also managing and mitigating associated risks. Associated risks could be risks that speak to the social aspects, and also it could be risks that speaks to environment. At the same time, we are keen on having relationships that speaks to or understands that resources are scarce and such must be used sustainably. Most importantly, the financial institutions or the private sector is keen on ethics and values. So any business that is going to have a relationship with them, then they must speak to issues around human rights, issues around diversity, issues around addressing anti-competitive behaviors. So in speaking to how we are able to, or how we accelerate this growth, we are looking to some of the systems that institutions are adapting as best practice in order to ensure or guide our relationship with the stakeholders that we have mapped and we interact with on our during our activities. As such, for instance, we have an environment and social management systems that now act as a set of policy guidelines or tools that will help to identify, mitigate environment and social risks, and at the same time elevate the capacities of people who are able to identify these risks, particularly when we are either onboarding or having our relationships as ongoing with these clients. As such, this also provide for a guided framework or process that we use to monitor environment and social performance, which I believe is equally very key when we are going to speak to social wellness and also to environmental sustainability. Some of the key issues that private sector currently are very keen on in promoting environmental and social accountability is, in any case, there is need to forge relationship. It must be relationship that adhere or respect international and local best practices in the areas of operation, and that probably speaks to labor and working conditions. In any case, there is also relationships that adhere or respect rule of law, and by and large, we're looking at the environmental laws. With environmental laws, we're looking at if they exist or policies that exist. We are speaking to waste management policy, environmental assessment policy and laws, and also we are looking at having or forging relationships that recognizes that biodiversity are unevenly distributed and they're also finite in availability. As such activity must be those which speak to biodiversity conservation, management, and equitable use as guided by the international best practice. Most importantly, we also understand that activities that we support are happening in a social environment. Such activities must be those which aim to respect cultural values that are in the areas of operations. We're also looking into activities that respect and aim to promote pollution control and management, and also community health and safety. And most importantly, you must know that the social environment of the community are already stretched by ever rising cases or instances of climate-related changes. And such, if you were to have development that also would further impact them negatively on their health, then you would not be able to realize the gains of development that you are looking to achieve or to support in such areas. And we as institution, we are recognizing that climate change is real and it's affecting various sectors. And we are at a time that we are recognizing that our activities, both internal and external, are not only affecting the environment, while at the same time the environment natural also is affecting our activity. As such, there is need for the private sector to take lead in building climate resilience institutions, that which will guide their operations, that which will guide their business strategy formulations, and further guide the relationship that they have with stakeholders, while abiding or adopting the international best practices around the just concluded COP27 that also had some mandate both to the private and public sector. Such, we must also align our activities and strategies towards, and at the same time towards the greater goal, that is the below 2 degrees requirement. How then do these institutions hope or embed such climate risks and opportunity management in their operations? First, and most importantly, is managing climate-related risks and opportunities require leadership. So private sector, by and large, for which we speak to, should provide or aims to provide leadership on climate risk management. And by providing leadership is where the responsibility of climate risk management would fall. That is policy formulation, strategy, and stuff around that, and provision of oversight of some of the targets or climate-related specific targets that they set. Secondly, we look at managing risks and opportunities. As such, we must be very agile and collaborative in identifying, assessing, monitoring, and reporting climate-related risks in our activities and association with our stakeholders. And most importantly, as required by international best practice, we are required to disclose climate-related exposures that probably these sectors have. These exposures, as reported by these sectors, would also be very important to guiding national governments of the areas within which these sectors operate, and also guide also international best practice. For instance, there are best practices around the task force on climate-related disclosures that also guides. There also governments are also adopting ESG-related guidelines and standards. Such we are equally demanded and required to align to this standard. Most importantly, probably speaking to the private sector, I believe that in designing and providing product and services, we are increasingly demanded to provide services that accelerate mitigation and also helps in the adaptation process. As such, and speaking to financial institutions, there is increased demand or discussion around financial inclusivity,
Brian,
of which now this targets. Yes, hello?
hi.
Hello, are you hearing?
I must ask you to round off so the other ones will have time.
Oh, sure, thank you. So again, then we are speaking to accountability on climate action with which we are required to disclose, and at the same time, also provide biased information around our sustainability action, some which could be negative and positive. That is also a key requirement. Another thing that we're looking into is a provision of the positive culture, and that is building capacities and improving involvement around diversity, wellness and health and safety. At the same time, we are speaking to environmental stewardship as a collective action towards addressing negative impacts of climate change, and our action towards the ecological restoration and the creation of awareness on the negative impact of environmental degradation, championing for sustainable consumption and production, that is both internally and externally in our relationship with stakeholders, while at the same time banking on nature-based aspect of addressing problems that we face that would accelerate support to circular economy and also biodiversity protection and conservation. Above all, providing products and services that support the green transition, that is supporting transition to the green energy, supporting sustainable agricultural activities, and supporting sustainable water harvesting. In waste management, exploring opportunities around industrial symbiosis, in which a waste from one company becomes a raw material in another, while aligning the people involved, particularly the identified, to access opportunities around waste management. Thank you very much.
Brian, yeah, for sure. The tools to identify measurements, all the accountability on all those issues. So thank you so much. Now we will hear what Joos on the Noortgate from Médecins Sans Frontières has been doing. And also, I know, by the way, IAM Bank is also now really going through their e-waste policies and action. So, thank you so much. Joos, the first of us.
Yes, thank you, Simone. Do you see my presentation on the screen, please? Hello?
Yes.
it? Do you want to put
You
it
can see
in?
it?
Yeah. Do you want to put it in display mode? Right now, it's we see the small one.
Yes, I will. I will do so. Just a sec. It was just to see if you'll see it. Is it okay now in display mode?
Maybe so. No, it is still in
Simone, you
the.
break. That is strange because is it moving or not?
It's not moving.
I will try again.
Should you share screen? Share screen. When you share present, you share screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to share my screen, but for the moment being, it doesn't seem to work. Although I tested it with my colleague this morning and actually it did work. Did you see it? Do you see it now?
Now, but just use this one otherwise, and just switch. Just go down in your presentation if you want.
Is it okay or not?
Yeah, we don't see the same mode. We see the other PowerPoint mode. Like the.
Yeah, sorry, Simone, you're breaking up complete, so I do not hear at all what you're saying. I'm very sorry.
I see. We see the PowerPoint mode with the small. So you can just go in that one if you want.
Visible here. So it's strange. It doesn't work.
He did before. I did.
Oh, my apologies, but don't know why.
Work 315. That is fine. Just work in that mode
Do you
and
see
just
it now?
change.
Can you see it now?
No. So please just use that one where you were. Yeah, I know. Sometimes it does this in normal meetings as well. I don't know why. So just use and click for each. Yeah, and we have good visibility anyway.
Okay, fine. Well, very sorry for this inconvenience. Anyway, I want to thank you on behalf of Doctors Without Borders that we are able to to present the role of MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières, in promoting this positive climate, environmental and social accountability. This is not going at all. It's not moving. Very sorry, but cannot do anything about it. And like this, do you see now something?
Just click on number 2.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, now you changed. Yes, now you changed it. Oh, now you made
Okay,
it smaller.
okay, great.
That's good.
Yeah, no, I made it bigger again. All right, yeah, thanks. Okay, so first of all, as we are a medical humanitarian organization, first rule for us is, of course, to do no harm. And therefore, the main purpose of the organization by itself is actually to reduce morbidity and mortality. And now with modern medicine that we start to introduce even more and more now also in low and medium income countries, it means that we also need more and more equipment, products and substances to obtain this objective. Now, these new equipment, products and substances, they may have some hazards which are physical, which are health related, or are having an impact on the environment. And as a responsible medical organization, obviously, we have to take precautions that these equipment, products, and substances do not harm, first of all, our patient, obviously, but also our staff and our visitors, and then people living around the health facilities, and of course, beyond that one. Now, as you can see here on this slide, we do have quite a lot of health-related hazardous waste families as such, and the families are actually linked to the function of the staff who is actually generating the hazardous waste or who is handling the hazardous waste. And you can see that actually the e-waste and other kind of equipment that is containing hazardous substances and batteries, they are only a part of what we are actually generating as hazardous waste. Although, as we will see in the next slide, that there are actually relationships with the other waste families as well. Now, of course, when we talk about e-waste, the first thing we talk always about, or we think about, is broken and decommissioned triple E. And of course, we want to avoid that there is too much accumulation of that very specific waste. And therefore, we have a tendency, at least, that's written down, that we should be eliminated in special campaigns, preferably every 6 months. Now, typical examples of e-waste that we are having are lamps, the energy-saving light bulbs, but also the UVC lamps, which are containing mercury and therefore are hazardous. But also in LED lamps, there are some hazardous elements. And then our medical equipment or biomedical equipment, like laboratory diagnostic machines, X-ray machines, but also freezers, fridges, aircos with containing the CFCs and so on. Our laundry machines, microwaves, cell phones, smartphones, telecommunication material, and so on, IT material, photovoltaic panels, and our rechargeable batteries. These are all examples of what we are actually having after a certain moment as e-waste. But at least as important, and even we have been spending more time on that, is actually the recurrently generated waste that is related to the triple E. And as they are generated on a very frequent basis, let's say daily or weekly, and we're talking here about consumables, they should be eliminated also on that same frequency. Now, in some cases, the volumes of this waste is so high, or they are so dangerous that actually we have to eliminate them in special campaigns again. Now here, it has been mentioned already, cartridges and toners are part of it, but also HEPA filters and air purifying filters. These are typical things that are directly related with our e-waste, but some of the waste, the consumables, are actually part for us in other hazardous waste families, like laboratory reagents, X-ray related waste with the developing and the fixer liquids, the X-ray film itself, and so on. Then you have biohazardous waste, sometimes that is created in this electronic equipment. Leftovers are expired insecticides for machines that are run by electronic machines, water treatment related waste, and then of course the batteries itself. Now, when we do waste management, we always try to follow as much as possible this inverted waste management pyramid, with the most preferred ones on top, obviously, as they are the most environmental friendly. And then the least preferred ones, we try to avoid them as much as possible. But we do have to take in consideration that in certain low and middle income countries, there is the facilities, the right facilities are not always available, or it's not affordable at all. And so therefore we might have to go for a little bit less preferred options. But what is important is that they are still safe. So that's an important one. Now, if you want to talk about reduction, then it's obviously a donation under very strict conditions, obviously, and also for the consumers to do an improved stock management. I think for reuse, it was already covered by the previous session, so I don't have to come back to that one. Recycling and recovery was also a little bit mentioned already. Now, of course, a little bit as you see in the picture, this kind of burning of appliances is obviously not what we consider as recycling. And then we get a little bit more into the consumable things as well that we have to take in consideration. And then we might have to think about co-processing, so which is actually a kind of incineration in cement factories, for instance, of PCBs and HCFCs and so on and so on. It's a safe manner to do it, and it is recognized by the Stockholm Convention. Now, other kind of items might just have to be incinerated, or powdered lab reagents might be inertized, which is a mixture of lime, cement, and water, and then it solidifies, and then you can dispose of it correctly and safely. Now, encapsulation by itself, we don't like it too much. It's actually more a last resort. The advantage is that you can use it for all kinds of hazardous waste, including e-waste. But the waste is not really destroyed, so it's a big loss, basically. And then for low-risk hazardous waste, we still have the dissolving dilution, and sometimes we can even dispose of it in a sink or a drain or burial. Now, most of the options that you see actually here are all World Health Organization and United Nations Environmental Program compliant. So that's important for us. And if we would have to export the waste, then obviously we adhere to the Basel Convention. Now, if there would be a legislation existing on e-waste or on hazardous waste in general, and if that legislation would be WHO and UNEP compliant, and then also looking if it would be feasible to do it in the country, in our own health structures or in an authorized institution or company, with the approved facilities and procedures, then obviously we will adhere without hesitation to it. However, if there is on one of these questions actually the answer is no, then maybe we should be looking also at the alternative approach, which is WHO and UNEP compliant. And then we follow actually the decisional tree as you see underneath, which I'm not going to go through completely. Now, of course, all of this is actually related straight to the waste management itself. But for us, it's also important to start from the beginning. And I think that the next session will be going a little bit more into that as well, is actually on new market review strategies, where we're actually going to incorporate the physical, health, and environmental hazards on the one hand. And then, it also has to evaluate the future waste management of all the equipment. Then not only about the equipment, but also of the consumables. And that's important to do it even before you purchase it. And it's only that when combining these two that we will be able to have really a reduction on climate change, environmental impact, the environmental pollution, and the social impact. Now, the alternative approach that we are using for our e-waste and our related hazardous waste is based on the EU Directive of 2012, EU Directive 19. A big part also on the European Waste Catalogue, the Global Harmonization System, some UN conventions of Basel, Stockholm, and Minamata, and of course also Bamako. And then for transport, we follow the ADR rules. Now, maybe just to illustrate very quickly an example of Malawi, when this mission was closing, we had actually a prototype that was tested in that mission, and it was not allowed from the manufacturer to donate it to somebody else. So we had to actually get rid of it in an appropriate manner. So we started to dismantle it in different components, being it low-risk hazardous components like the gas springs and the metal casing by itself, and then harmful hazardous standard electronic components like the ballast and the relays. And then the high-risk hazardous waste was really the UVC lamps, which are containing the mercury gas. And so for the gas springs and the metal casing, we just sent them to a scrapyard and they were reused or recycled. The electronic components were sent to a specialized shop for reuse. But then the UVC lamps, we had actually three options in mind, or to recycle them in specialized institutions, but they were unfortunately not available in Malawi. Exportation, via following the rules of the Basel Convention, but there was not enough time available. So actually we were left over with the least favorable solution of all, but at least it was safe and it was working for us, which was actually the encapsulation, and it is still considered as the best available technique that we had in this particular case. So to conclude, our role and our responsibility, so all our e-waste and all the related hazardous waste, we are obliged to eliminate it safely, always take into account the hazards, being it physical, health, and environmental hazards. It should be done regularly, whatever the context. Now, secondly, for us it's very important that all the rules and conventions are respected. However, it's not always possible due to affordability or due to availability of the right facilities. So potentially we might have to slightly adapt these rules and conventions to be appropriate. And then you have appropriate and safe e-management, e-waste management. There are available, these solutions in low and middle income countries. We have heard already a lot of examples today. But they should also be foreseen already within the market strategy review before we purchase the equipment. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to manage it properly anyway. And then although that the waste generator stays very often responsible for our very specific waste, because very often it's imported. It's very specific waste. It's not like a cell phone or whatever, a very medical high level equipment. So we stay a little bit responsible for our waste, but we do demand of the authorities, the donors and the manufacturers, that they do some efforts as well to improve the hazardous and the e-waste management for low and middle income countries. And then finally, and I think that this forum is very good for it, is the pragmatic knowledge and experience that we're having. We should be sharing it with the stakeholders like our partners, authorities, donors, and manufacturers. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Joos. Wonderful to see the tools that you have, the way you, with the funnel, the flow diagram, and everything. But we have another speaker, so we'll talk about that later. Owen is representing Safaricom, the biggest telecom company in Kenya. The floor is yours, Owen. I see you there.
Thank you, Simone. I think there's a bit of a network issue from your side.
I'm so sorry. I don't know.
I need to send somebody to where you are so that we can be able to improve that network connectivity. Thank you very much. Leon, I think you can bring up the slides as I begin. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Owen Ombima from Safaricom. As Simone has mentioned, the Senior Officer in charge of Environmental Management. Glad to be here speaking on the role of the private sector in promoting a positive climate, environmental, and social accountability. So you can go to the next slide. Leon, you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Whenever I'm speaking about environmental and social accountability, I like first looking at a picture of the world. Just go back to the world. Leon. I like speaking about the world because the world is only one, and we can only live in one planet. We don't have any other option. We don't have a plan B. This is our only plan. And if we fail at this, our extinction is imminent. So it's just something you can ponder about, look into, and have a deep soul-searching experience in terms of understanding what the environment and the social accountability is all about. You can move to the next slide, please. So at the end of the presentation, I'll be hoping I'll be able to untangle what is environmental and social accountability, what's the importance of having a positive environmental and social accountability, and how can we, the private sector, Safaricom, Atelco, promote environmental and social accountability. And basically, I will be able to highlight key areas where Safaricom has been able to create this environmental and social accountability. So definitions first, just to get us on to a similar platform. So environmental and social accountability, basically we are referring to our responsibility to assess, manage, and monitor environmental and social risks and impact as a result of our day-to-day operations. In the context of the private sector, you're looking at Safaricom. Our core purpose is to transform lives, and we are a tech company which provides basically GSM and fintech products and services. How are we able to create a positive environmental and social accountability? No entity whatsoever, whether private, public, can survive in a dead planet. And this has come out very clearly in regards to the recent cases of drought as a result of climate change. Specifically in Kenya, in the northern parts, you've seen how much we have lost in terms of cattle, livelihood, and this has given us a direct hit to the economy. Some facts for the statisticians in Kenya, between 1990 and 2000, drought led to a loss which cost us about $2.8 billion US. In 2011, a similar case of drought cost us $12.1 billion US. And this, in comparison to that year, the GDP of the country was 71 billion. This is about 20% of the GDP for the country. That shows how much the environment and the social aspects contribute to the economy of a country, to the economy of a continent, and to the economy of the world. How can the private sector provide and promote environmental and social accountability? I will focus on two key areas because there are a lot of areas, some which have been mentioned by my colleagues, Brian and Joos. I will focus on integrating social, environmental accountability into our day-to-day business processes, and I will focus on partnerships. One is focusing on the internal, and the other is focusing on external. Because as you can just go back. Thank you. Because as the private sector, we have to be cognizant of the fact that we do not work alone. No entity can survive alone. You will need your neighbor, you will need other corporates, you will need the government, you will need the civil society to be able to run and to be able to make impact. And in Safaricom's case, so that you're able to transform lives. And before you get to a point where you're looking at these partnerships, you have to put a mirror in front of yourself. You have to look at yourself as a private sector. What are you doing, first of all, before you start partnering with others? And that's where integrating environmental and social accountability comes in. Are you able to gauge yourself in terms of how environmentally you're performing, in terms of your projects, your programs, your day-to-day activities? When you're procuring, when you're manufacturing, or when you're providing a services, value chain from upstream to downstream. How are you impacting the environment and the social aspect of your processes? You can move to the other slide. And I want to bring two initiatives that Safaricom has been currently doing and had started a while back that brings out the aspect of environment and social accountability. One is the e-waste program, which I will unpack, and the other is planting of 5 million trees in 5 years. And the question that people will normally ask is, why are you planting trees and you're a tech company? But I'll be able to unpack that as we go along after I unpack the e-waste program. Next slide, Leon. I believe Joos or Brian had given statistics about e-waste and the amount of e-waste that is currently in Africa, in Kenya, and in globe, how much we put out. And that is a concern because the overall effects of e-waste. We know e-waste contains aspects which are very detrimental to the environment. It contains aspects and chemicals like mercury, which are poisonous to people. And for that reason, management of e-waste is very crucial in terms of maintaining our environment and our health. So Safaricom has started 2 projects and is currently running 2 projects which are tackling this issue of e-waste. The first one is a trade-in program which we are currently on pilot in some of our shops. If you're in Kenya, you're free to visit Buruburu shop and I&M shop, which I believe is where Brian might be. So what do we do in this trade-in? Like the normal trade-ins, we allow customers to bring in their old devices or devices which they feel are not of use anymore, and we give them other devices which they may have use for. And this was meant to help us increase the life of mobile phones. help people be able to use devices for a longer period, and also help us conserve the environment. Because once these phones are not being used and they're obsolete, they'll find their way into landfills, contributing to environmental degradation and leading to the aspects of emissions and so forth. The other program we're currently running with is the e-waste collection program, which we're running with Waste Center, which is a partnership project which we are looking at mobilizing e-waste across the entire country and creating kind of a pool that will allow various people, from consumers to corporates, to basically bring their e-waste to our shops. And in turn, we partner with Waste Center, who are able to collect this e-waste from our shops. They go ahead to refurbish, recycle, and the ones which they cannot recycle, they are able to dispose in an environmental friendly way. And this one we do free of charge, because we recognize that this is our responsibility as a company. Our purpose to transform lives does not just end at getting revenue, or providing that service, GSM service, or providing that fintech solution, that M-Pesa service, but it goes beyond to providing an environment that we can thrive in. And if we're able to collect this e-waste and create a clean, healthy environment, we believe that the environment will thrive, and in return, the economy will thrive, and all the private sector players will thrive. On to the next slide. And finally, onto our final project, basically to bring about, just to demonstrate how the environment and social aspect come into play. Most of the time when we are discussing about environmental accountability, the social accountability does not come into play, but that is something that we are keen on as Safaricom to also bring into play. How are you able to create an environmental accountable economy and also create a socially accountable economy? How are you able to, for instance, reduce the gender gap? How are you able to reduce the pay gaps if you're in a corporate, income gaps if you're looking at a particular demography? And that's what we are looking at when we started our project to plant 5 billion trees in 5 years. As an organization, we are cognizant of the fact that our operations produce a lot of carbon emissions. When we are burning fossil fuels using our fleet, when we are using generators, when we have power outages, and when we're using electricity. So we are emitting carbon emissions into the atmosphere. We have to figure out a way to offset these emissions. And what is the best way to offset emissions? That is cater for the environment and also cater for the social aspect which we are looking at as Safaricom. So we came up with the tree growing to be able to grow trees to offset our emissions and to also provide a livelihood for the people around the forest. Looking at the Community Forest Association, the Kenya Forest Service, and how they contribute to the environment. When we're planting trees, we normally involve both the communities and the Kenya Forest Association, because for the community, they are able to get livelihoods when they are involved in ecotourism. They are able to work in what we call in Kenya shamba system, but in scientific terms, it's called a telis or a pelis system, where you get to intercrop forests with crops, or with your day-to-day food crops. This enables the communities to be able to get benefits in terms of food, and also when they are getting the food, they are also able to take care of the forests, which enable us to offset our emission and also to just protect our biodiversity. I think you can move to the final slide. That sums it up for me. Thank you very much. Over to you, Simon.
in that case. Wonderful to hear. 3 big organizations with a very firm determination of contributing in a good way and trying also to compensate or mitigate the effects. Lovely. We have exhausted our timing. Let me see if we have any questions. No, not in here. I had some comments anyway that I wanted to share, and maybe you also have a final remark or a comment out of what you've heard. I was thinking there's a lot of policies, and I see that you have stepped beyond that, which is commendable. You're actually taking a lot of action, which is what we want to see and inspire others to do. So thank you for being part of this. And also, since we are in partnership with all 3 of you, also I want to emphasize how important that is that we share and, partner up together, because we can't solve these issues by ourselves. Another thing that came to mind we didn't touch upon now, we talked about climate and the effects, but I would like to concretize a bit, especially since we had, all of us are very digital nowadays, and something that people are not really aware of, I've noticed, is the issue of the effects from all our cloud space usage and the servers that we have that needs cooling and all of that energy also. So basically the cloud or the digital footprint that we are all putting. Is there any one of you who would like to comment on that? Since we are in the space of electronics and digital devices. And Brian, Owen, maybe?
Maybe you can comment on that. At some point I mentioned about emissions, and emissions also come about energy usage, cloud usage, how you use your server, your cooling. I didn't want to delve deep into this because I know it's a whole topic on its own, but the amount of the refrigerants we use contribute a lot to the carbon emission. When you're using your normal R22, R134 gases, they contribute a lot to the environment, and those are actually the greenhouse gas emissions which we are looking at offsetting. When you're looking at servers and the amount of energy you're using, there's always that consideration you have to put into place. How much energy are you using? What kind of energy are you using? I believe it's fortunate that as a country, 90% of our energy is renewable energy from hydroelectric power and geothermal power, but that is still energy. How can we diversify this pool of energy to look at solar energy, for instance, to look at wind-powered energy? So those are the aspects that as a company we are also looking into, so that we are able to reduce the load on the grid power, and we are able to focus on renewable energy, which is which helps us reduce on this aspect of climate change, and basically focus on improving the climate action part.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. And I'm thinking in the next step, we also need to educate the general public on this, because I know that, for instance, if I download music or a video or something when I'm on Wi-Fi, it demands much less energy and space than if I do it through the 4G network, for instance. So maybe we can partner up on such sensitization later on, or maybe some others will do also. Joos, from the Médecins Sans Frontières side, when you capsule and deposit, do you note down the coordinates of where you place this. In this case, you had an example of mercury lightings.
Yeah. So normally when we do this, or it's in a controlled landfill, but the first problem is very often already to find a real controlled one in low-income countries. What we do have is what we call a sharp spit, which is a form of bigger size encapsulation, where we normally also dispose of our sharps waste inside. But it's completely sealed off. And these are always linked, of course, to health structures, long-term health structures. And in that sense, we do know indeed where these places will be, obviously. And it's also the longer term. So we do know. If it would be in a shorter term sharp spit, it's then like in a drum. But this drum would even be taken out of that space and then be buried at a safe place. So as I said, it's very much our last resort. But in some cases, you don't have anything else. And it's still a technique that even is used in high-income countries, but we try to avoid it as much as possible.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Guys, we need to round off. I'm very, very grateful. And I'm sure we have inspired a lot of people. We have 80 people tuning in right now. So this is a continuous work, of course. And I'm just so happy and proud also of what you've done so far, and I see that it is accelerating. I also see in general or across the globe that sustainability, circularity, all of this is coming on strong, even in terms of HR and the structures and the business models and the way also in high level C-suits. So this is only the beginning. I think we're going to go very far. Thanks a lot. Have a great afternoon. I hope you continue listening in on the next session. And all of you listening here, we will move you to the next session where we will talk even about this, because the topic is green procurement and sustainable electronics, and also how refurbished items can benefit us all and in the business. So stay tuned. We'll move to the next. Thanks.